I imagine many of you watching have a hat collection. I mean, it's a common complaint I hear at farm shows across the country. You'll take a hat, but it's not like you need one with so many piled up at home. But leave it to Andrew McCrae. He stumbled on the world's largest hat collection as we travel the countryside this weekend.
Filming my dad loading the semi.
In the 1960s, Scott Legried's dad was farming, as well as selling livestock equipment and snowmobiles. He was on the road and would occasionally be given a hat by those with whom he did business.
What I had heard is he went into the closet to get something one day, and there was a bunch of hats on a shelf that was kind of different colors. And he said, that's kind of pretty. It'd be kind of fun just to collect some of them.
Scott's father began collecting hats, sorting and boxing them. As Scott grew, he and his father were always working on their family farm that dates to 1875. Many of the hats had ties to their livelihood.
A lot of it was farm hats. That's just because we're in that industry and our family's been doing it for so long. He had another couple rules. They had to have a patch on them or an advertisement. They couldn't be plain. And then they couldn't have any dirty sayings. They had to be clean sayings.
Over time, the collection grew, and his father set personal goals for the number and types of hats he wanted to collect.
So these are a lot of the John Deere hats.
One of those achievements was tied to John Deere dealerships.
He wanted to get a John Deere hat that said the state and the name of the dealership, implement dealer, from every state, so all 50 states.
And once he had all 50 states, he set out to get one from each Canadian province as well. Scott's father passed in 2011, which means Scott oversees thousands of hats today.
So this is still the world's largest hat collection. Over 109,000, I would guess about 115,000 if I had to take a guess.
And they did not collect duplicate hats, so each should be unique.
They got the same logo and colors, but if you look, this one is solid, and this one is mesh, so that makes them different.
Yep.
Scott has some hats displayed in his home, along the walls, and on shelves in the garage. There's 3 semi-loads of hats that have been boxed, documented, and categorized. They did that when Guinness Book certified the collection several years ago. Scott's father loved collecting hats, yet he says there is something a bit ironic about the collection.
He wasn't a big hat wearer. He wore a couple weeks in the spring for planting, and then a couple weeks in the fall when we harvested to keep the sun out of his eyes, of course. And that was it. Mostly in the winter he wore a stocking hat, and other than that he didn't wear one. So that's kind of funny.
But Scott, on the other hand, does wear hats, but he doesn't pick from the collection. It's kind of sacred.
I'll just stare at them for just a few minutes to remind myself of some of the companies that used to be around that aren't around anymore, because there's quite a few companies here that aren't around anymore, sad to say, just how times go.
Scott enjoys these hats, but he does hope they can find a permanent home someday where more people can see them, all of them, and the story they share about farming and more through what's emblazoned on the hats.
My dad was my best friend, and I'm proud for what he reached for his goals, and kind of fun to reminisce about it. It reminds me of my dad.
When I'm on the farm, I wear a hat every day. But to show you the size of Scott's collection, if I were to wear a different hat from this collection every day, it'd take me 319 years to get through the collection. Traveling the countryside in Frost, Minnesota, I'm Andrew McCrae.
As Andrew mentioned, that collector would like to find a permanent home for those hats, whether that be a community or museum that would be dedicated to displaying them. If you have any ideas, email us at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. Well, speaking of museums, we're off to the Lone Star State to see a cotton picker from the 1950s that now has a permanent home indoors. Tractor Tales is next.